Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I do not know much about the Middle Ages, but as a writer of poetry, it behooves one to know a little bit. And so a couple of things happened recently. A few days ago, Steve Donahue, booktuber, made a video which I think he titled The Middle Ages Starter Kit, which got me to thinking. And then this evening, when I was out with my dog, I stopped at a neighborhood book box and came across this, the Gawain Poet Complete Works, and so I pulled it out and brought it home with me. So I've been thinking about the medieval world, the Middle Ages, for the last several days. And I don't know exactly what my thoughts are, but I pulled out some books that I have. Now, in his video, Steve talks about the poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I don't think I've read it. I thought I had a copy of it in the original. These are translations, but I couldn't find it. It's probably somewhere, and I believe there is another version of the story also well known in French, and I believe I had that one, and I can't find that. This is really drawing on distant memories for me, so I could be completely wrong. I mean, a lot of these things existed in more than one variation, and time has winnowed them down. So I pulled out some old books, and two things that I found surprised me. So this contains multiple works, and in fact, let me just read you from the general introduction. During the last 2 or 3 decades of the 14th century, in a period of the history of the language called Late Middle English, a man whose name we do not know, but whose dialect places him in or near Cheshire, about 200 miles northwest of London, wrote 5 poems. 2 of them, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and Pearl, are recognized as superb examples of their genres. They continue to be widely read, both in the original language and in translation. Sir Gawain is an Arthurian romance. Pearl is a dream vision governed by Christian doctrine and symbolism. Their author is called the Gawain poet, or less frequently, the Pearl poet. We know nothing about his life except what we can infer from the poems themselves. So it really surprised me when I stumbled upon this, which is translation by the same writer of Sir Gawain and Patience and Pearl. So 3 of these works. So I get the sense of a scholar at work and adding to the translations of this medieval poet, and with each new translation, Norton puts out a new version of the book. Now both of these covers actually they look like self-pub jobs, and when I first saw this, I thought, geez, what kind of self-pub is this? It looked like something from a Create Space or whatever that's called now with Amazon. But no, it's actually Norton. You would not believe it with a cover like that. And so is this. And an older volume, which I paid less than $1 for, it contains simply Pearl alone. It's a very nice volume, and this actually has a very nice cover. So I haven't read any of these in the translation. I don't know how much of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight I read in the copy that I had of it. Probably not a whole lot. But the poem Pearl is something that goes way back with me. Now, I should say that I will put a link in the description box to Steve Donahue's video. And when I was young, I came across the poem Pearl in a Penguin volume. Well, let me backtrack a little bit and just talk about that. I was young and fairly illiterate, I should say, but I was curious enough, and somehow I got a copy of T.H. White's The Sword and the Stone, and that led me on to The Once and Future King, and I loved The Once and Future King very much. Steve talks about it in his video. Just a really wonderful work of prose. Unfortunately, I lent it to a neighbor 30 years ago and never got it back. And it's not something, the same one who took my The Airman's Odyssey, never got it back. If I saw a copy somewhere, I might pick it up, but it's not something that I expect to revisit. Now, it also, there was a successive Merlin volume, which I paradoxically felt both, number one, that it should have just been included in The Once and Future King, but then also I didn't like nearly so much as The Once and Future King. And I don't remember why that is, but I did like The Once and Future King quite a bit. And that led me, I don't remember what kind of an introduction that T.H. White might have put in that volume talking about historical sources or that kind of thing. He must have had something of that. And so I was curious. And at some point, when I found them at the store, I discovered Penguins, which was a great boon to my life. Back in the pre-internet day, it was not so easy as finding some expert, such as Steve Donahue, to make a video on YouTube that could just tell you what you needed to know. So it was much more a hit or miss process, and you wound up going down lots of blind alleys and that kind of thing. And I'm still not even sure that I have my feet firmly on the ground in any one subject. I most likely do not in most cases. But I did find the Mallory. Now, there are other versions of the Morte d'Arthur. And this, I think, is the most comprehensive and complete one. And I did read this when I was young. I think I found something in here. No, it wasn't this book. Well, or if I did, I left it where I found it. I found some weird, I think it was an old Japanese rail ticket. The writing was real faded. Now, it says here page 122. Now, that must have been a note to myself. Let me see what's on page 122. So I took these books with me on my first trip to Japan. Oh, okay. It's because it's got King Pellinore. Chapter 4, how the battle was finished, or he came, and how the king founded an abbey where the battle was. Therewithal came one to King Arthur, and told him that King Pellinore was within 3 mile with a great host. And he said, go unto him, and let him understand how we have sped. So within a while King Pellinore came with a great host, and saluted the people and the king, and there was great joy made on every side. Then the king let search how much people of his party there was slain, and there were found but little past 200 men slain, and 8 knights of the Table Round in their pavilions. I think King Pellinore was my favorite character in this book. I've never given these a reread, and perhaps I should. But another thing which I came upon in those early Penguins was the new Pelican Guide to English Literature, edited by Boris Ford. And I think I've shown these somewhere else. This is a really marvelous volume. It is part 1 of 2 parts of volume 1. And at the time, I was only able to find 1 through 4. Subsequently, I think as far as number 8 or 9 was published, and with the advent of internet, I did acquire them. But I think I only read those first 4. I'm not sure that I've read any of the later ones. And this one always escaped me. But this was also in when I decided to try and round out the collection, this was in that batch. So part 2, the European inheritance, and part 1 was Chaucer and the alliterative tradition. And so this book was quite useful to me. And it has an anthology, and in fact both of them do, and I would highly recommend both of these books if you really want to get your feet wet into medieval literature, as it were. These anthologies are really wonderful. This has a little bit of William Langland, Piers Plowman. I don't think it's anything complete. And it has, I don't think there's anything like Chaucer, because that you can go elsewhere for. But of these harder to obtain works, of course, now you can probably get them all online. But the one item that impressed me most of all was the poem Pearl. And I loved the poem Pearl. And it inspired me while I was still in Paul Carroll's class to write a poem, which I think I titled The Pearl, which wound up in my first book, Embodiment and Release. And I'm going to guess that I've done a recording for it on this channel. And if I did, I will put a link to it in the description box as well, so you can hear it. But so this poem has been with me a long time, and I am not sure how much of it I read. I think I probably read the whole thing, and probably more than once. And it's just a poem that I have loved my entire life. So let me try to give you the first stanza. And the Penguin is really nice because there are glosses at the bottom of the page for the words that you might not understand. Pearl plaisante to princes pay, to clanly clothes in gold so clear, out of Orient, I hardly say, ne proved I never her precious pair. So rounde, so reckon in uch array, so small, so smooth her sides were, wheresoever I jugged gemmes gay, I set her singly in singular. Alas, I lest her in on bear, thur gresse to ground a hit fro me yacht. I drain fordolkt of luft donger of that privy pearl withouten spot. And then that precious pearl withouten spot, or here he's saying privy, it's a refrain in the book. It's real of that precious pearl withouten spot. It's an absolutely wonderful poem, and you don't need the translation, really, if you're willing to spend a little time with it. Steve often will tell you that with Chaucer, and so it is with Pearl. I can't speak for the Green Knight, but Pearl, definitely. So I've never looked at this. I really should. I mean, I've glanced at it. When I find something like this, I'm sure I've read the introduction. Let's hear how it's translated, because I really didn't understand a lot of what I was saying in the second part of that stanza. Pearl, that a prince is well content to give a circle of gold to wear. Boldly I say, all Orient brought forth none precious like to her. So comely in every ornament, so slender her sides, so smooth they were. Ever my mind was bound and bent to set her apart without a peer. In a garden of herbs I lost my dear, through grass to ground away it shot. Now, lovesick, the heart, the heavy loss I bear of that secret pearl withouten spot. Sorry, I slipped back into the original. When I first saw this, I thought, oh, is it a bilingual edition? That would be the ideal thing. But as I say, something like this that just has the gloss at the bottom works as well. Although for me at this point, the font size doesn't work so well. Well, it's not the font size that doesn't work so well, but you know what I mean. So this book was with me a long time, and the first 4 volumes were probably also my introduction to literary criticism. Excuse me. My throat is really dry, and I don't have my customary beverage. Oh, here it is. Oh no, this isn't it. This is something else, a receipt of some sort. Yeah, this is not what you probably can't see it, but there is some faint writing there. Am I showing you the backside? I'm not even sure. Now, being a curious soul, when I was young, I also bought this Pelican edition and only read it a couple of years ago. And I think it is a marvelous introduction to medieval Europe. It was reprinted in various editions. I think the Pelican history, the name changed a couple of times, but the author Maurice Keene, it was a really good introduction for me. Now, Steve has talked a lot about Chaucer, and I noticed that I have this, a Norton Critical Edition, and I am not sure how much of this I have looked at. When it comes to Chaucer, probably the critical thing is the Canterbury Tales, and I am not sure how much of that I have read as well, but this is really a great edition to have. I like all of the Norton Critical editions, generally speaking. I assume it's been revised, but I'll show you another edition. Well, this is when I was in university. University of Illinois at Chicago Circle Campus, as we called it. That was where I attended Paul Carroll's workshop. And I audited a class on Chaucer. And in those days, you could just sit in on a class and if the teacher was feeling kind. And so I sat in on the class and didn't do any of the work. But I read the stuff. And I think the teacher brought in a phonograph, and we were able to hear how Middle English may have sounded. Now, this, I'm realizing this is probably not the best volume at this point because Canterbury Tales has both poetry and prose. And so this book omits the prose, which is sort of silly. I mean, even though it's poetry, the Canterbury Tales just should have been included complete. But be that as it may, I have another edition of it, which I bought when I was in Taipei. Probably unreadable at this time, besides which the binding is starting to break. An illegal copy, I am sure, of some original edition edited by A.C. Cawley. And I was staying in youth hostels, and I really don't remember at all the situation. I was in a bunk bed in the lower bunk, and there was a guy in the upper bunk. And I think I had a little desk in there, and I had a couple of books out, and this was one of them. And he grabbed it and he said, "Can I look at this?" Now, he must have had some training when he was in school, because it was not completely alien to him as it was to me. I just could not get into this. Now, I've managed, when I was in that class, I managed to get into some of the earlier parts, the prologue and I think the Wife of Bath's Tale, and maybe the Knight's Tale, which I think was in prose, so wouldn't be in here. I don't know how that would be then. We must have had mimeographs or something. I don't know. But he asked if he could look at it, so he did. And I don't know, I was reading something on my bed, and he was up in the bunk above me, and he was just laughing uproariously. And I think he was reading The Miller's Tale. And so, of course, I thought, wow, somebody can actually read this stuff and get something out of it. And so I think after that, I read The Miller's Tale. That inspired me to do that. As a writer of poetry, you don't need everything. I've said with, say, Shakespeare's sonnets, you can get by with just a handful of them because his technique is pretty much unchanging from sonnet to sonnet. But there's a lot of positive to be said for reading the whole of his sonnets as well. Don't get me wrong, but as far as what you need as a poet, it's just much narrower than that. So that's Chaucer. Now I got this, which is the Penguin translation edition, translated by Neville Coghill. And I think I tried reading it, but I really did not care for it. It's a case of I much prefer the original to this. But the same translator also did Troilus and Cressida, or however you say it, Cressida, I think is what Shakespeare has. And I think I read this in the translation and liked it. I think I've read it in the original as well. And I think I've spent more time with Troilus and Cressida in Chaucer's works than with the Canterbury Tales. But that's, I think, just simply because it's a little bit of an easier work. So I'm showing you what I have. And I don't have much else. Just a couple of anthologies. Somebody recently on BookTube did some kind of a haul and pulled in the first poems in English translated by Michael Alexander. And I think this is really a great book. So the first poems in English, I think, put you a little bit in advance of all of the rest of this, because that's Middle English, and this I think is Old English even, but translated. And this is a very nice anthology. It exists in an older edition under a different title as well, and I think I may have had that at one time. This is really nice. It's a paperback with some kind of a plastic slipcover that fits it just perfectly. I guess for the library that it came from, which a book like this should never have been withdrawn, but it's not for me to say. And this is a book which, it's another old Penguin, medieval English verse, translated by Brian Stone. And I think I've looked at it, but I don't know what my feelings were. It looks pretty nice. I mean, it's all translated, of course, and it looks like a pretty good collection and a pretty good translation as far as these things go. But as I say, the anthology in here, and this volume also has an anthology, which I've not really looked at, but it's, to my mind, it's a good idea to try to get to the original if you can. But again, you certainly don't need to read everything. For the layman, you don't need to read all of Chaucer in the original. It's a wonderful undertaking, I would suppose, if you did it. But it is certainly useful and helpful to have some familiarity with it. So these are my medieval books. Now, one facet of Steve's starter kit, which kind of surprised me, was that he omitted a lot of the rise of Islam, which is the major event, I would suppose, of medieval times. I can't remember. He must have talked about it, but somehow it felt like maybe it was more literature focused. I am sure if he gets enough requests, he will do the Rise of Islam starter kit, something like that. At any rate, I'm just talking off the top of my head, I guess, and not really making any great coherent sense. But I have to say that as far as being a writer of poetry, I was just so lucky that this Penguin came into my possession when it did, and getting to know the poem Pearl when I did. And then, of course, also having read the Malory. And this, I'm not really sure what this is. This is the Anglo-Saxon World, some sort of an anthology. I believe it has the Beowulf. But I've not really looked at this that much either. But it looks like a good anthology of stuff. So I will leave off there. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel, and I will catch you on the next one. There he is.